Hey everyone, this is Editor Nate from the future, and I've got to do a little bit of spoiling for this one because we're going to get into some explicit content. So, part of this, the very beginning, is about why Nate is not an English major anymore. And if you're one of those weird Nate fan people, and you know who you are, but you can't handle a story called Memories of My Melancholy Whores from the perspective of a 90-year-old who, while he never copulates with an underage prostitute, that doesn't necessarily make it better. So, if that's not your thing, but you want to know more about Nate for some weird reason, just keep listening until about the 13-minute mark. Once we say that we're going into the summary, that's your chance to shut it off. I do grade Ben and the author at the end, and we talk about that English class. So that starts at about 54 and a half minutes if you just want to skip the entire summary for some reason, but you want to hear about Nate and this goofy English class. I don't know who I'm catering to right now, but I figured I would give you the out if that's you. Otherwise, if that subject matter sounds like not your bag at all, maybe you skip this one, and we'll see you next week.
I hit it as well.
Hit it and then you quit it. Just like our protagonist, Flaming Butthole Man himself. I don't remember his name. Hey, it's Words About
named.
Books. I don't give a shit if he even has a name. He's Flaming Butthole Man now. It's Words About Books, where we sometimes talk about good books, but mostly we don't. Mostly we are just stuck just in misery, non-stop. It's awful. I'm Nate, and I'm joined, as always, by Ben. I guess Dracula was actually pretty good, so how's it going?
Going good. Hola.
No.
Me amo.
Nope, you're done.
So, what are we talking about today? You did this to us. And I understand there's a little bit of backstory that we should probably give before we get into it.
Little bit? The fuck are you talking about? That's like the whole reason I did this. It's not a little bit. We should dive into the story first, and then air my grievances later.
Yeah, no, I think we should talk about your grievances. Just very briefly, how did you come to read this book?
So first of all, we read this book due to a Patreon poll.
Yes, but what did you tell the patrons?
But okay, all right, Ben, you gotta slow down. You gotta lean into the pitch. If you want to vote on what novels, or in this case, novella, that we read, we've got a poll going out every month to determine what we're gonna read 2 months from now. And so this poll was, I don't even, you know what? The other books in it, unimportant, because this one, Memories of My Melancholy Whores by Gabriel García Márquez, is how I'm gonna pronounce that with my English.
It is definitely Marquez.
I don't give a shit, Ben. He can get his name pronounced properly when he writes something good that also I have read.
He is a Nobel Prize winning author.
Not for this one. Not for this one. In fact, I think we should maybe consider taking at least a quarter of that prize back. And the prize money.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how we came to read it, but I read this as a young lad many years ago. Putting in the flashback music right here, Ben.
I figured, yeah.
So I was definitely 18, almost 19. So it's a summer class. I was an English major, Ben.
The scandal.
right? And I did...
The humanities? What? Did you want to be poor?
No, that's actually part of the reason I got out. I was preparing to enter my English major, so everyone has to take English 101 and English 102, which is just like composition and literature. We're gonna pick topics that the teacher likes, and you're just gonna write about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, like an idiot, was getting ready to go into the English major, so I needed to take, it's either like introduction to fiction, nonfiction, or poetry. So this was in introduction to fiction. And once again, the teacher gets to pick the subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was basically read a book per week and then write a paper about it. And Haroon in the Sea of Stories, which we talked about in this podcast, was actually one of those. And this book was one of those. And
yeah, I just thought of something. Unsighted, the internet's least reliable English lit podcast that I remembered this time. They've been yelling at us because apparently we've been scooping all the books they want to talk about. And now we're just kind of scooping their whole format, which is they are actual English majors that didn't quit like you. And
yeah,
their
I
whole
scooped
podcast
them
is,
by quitting.
it's just about
I
no,
got
their
out.
whole podcast is like they talk about the books they had to read in their undergrad. So we're just doing this is an unlicensed episode of Unsighted at this point. So go on, they'll love this.
No, actually, we're just gonna start subtly like changing the graphic. It's gonna say words about books, and then in the corner, it's gonna say Unsighted.
The internet's least reliable English lit podcast. Go listen to Unsighted.
So,
But I mean, finish listening to this, but then you can go listen to Unsighted. You're an English major. You're taking your first English majorly class.
yeah, and also my last. So yeah, when your instructor, is that the appropriate word? Teacher.
I do understand that they fight over the term professor.
Well, she wasn't a professor, so you don't get that kind of clout.
I called every college teacher a professor, but
I called my first English teacher a professor, and he said, I'm not one of those, so...
No, I have since been told by many, usually humanities major, professor, you got to earn that.
Yeah, you got to earn
guess.
your stripes. Because,
Yeah. I'll be real with you. If you're teaching me, you ain't made it. Like, if you're in any classroom that I'm also in, you're not that good. You're not at the top of your field. But, if you're professor, if you want to be a professor.
No, not this one, though. You get instructor. Maybe junior instructor.
You're instructor. I know nothing about academia.
Because if your guideline is, all right, read the book and then write me a paper on it, and I tell you that this book fucking sucks, and I explain why. I was pretty thorough. I did make fun of it because at one point he yells at the sleeping girl, which we'll get into.
Did you show me the paper you wrote on this? Because I think I did read it.
Maybe. But he yells at her, "You're a whore."
I just can't believe this.
Dad, keep your
you
voice down.
whore!
And I put that as a quote in my paper. And then I wrote after that an astute observation from a learned man.
I read your paper, and I am going to say your paper was kind of antagonistic.
Yeah, this book was antagonistic, Ben.
If you had me read that paper before you submitted it, I could have told you you're not going to get a good grade on this one.
Hey,
your
guideline. Your only guideline was to write a paper. I fulfilled your guideline of writing a paper.
That paper read like a script for words about books. That was a very early version of this podcast, complete with like the running commentary on the summary.
But yeah. Well, yeah. But the thing is, Ben, your guideline was write a paper. I get 100%. I 100% fulfilled your guideline of writing you a paper. if you wanted it to talk about certain things or address certain things in a certain way, you should probably give me a rubric, tell me what to do. Everyone else gave me a rubric, Ben, and I fulfilled all the objectives.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
real Bush League move there, not given a rubric. That is on her.
After suffering through this class, which was about colonialism, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll save that for later.
Which we also had to watch Waking Life, I think, which is a story about... I say story very loosely because it's a guy who's having like a lucid dream, and then it's just a series of conversations on various douche philosophical topics that's supposed to expand my mind. And also Alex Jones is there as a police officer yelling out of a window about waking up. So
featuring, as Ernest Klein would say, an impossibly young Alex Jones.
Yes.
His neck still fit in most standard polos.
Well, it was animated, so... But I knew as soon as it said Alex Jones was in it, I was like, oh, I bet he was that loud, angry police officer shouting at people to wake up. Oh, yeah, look at that, he was. So I also said that didn't have a story, and she was like, well, it sounds like you're describing a story, but okay. It's like, okay, fair. I will revise my statement. It's got a bare bones story. Then it uses that bare bones story to hang all the douche philosophy, and it's trying to sound profound when it's not. So that was my experience in that class. I remember waking up one day. It was summer. The new semester was coming up for the fall. I was planning on being an English and a psych major.
Okay.
And I went, you know what? I don't want to do an English major anymore. I want to go into a major where I don't have to do paper after paper after paper that is then subjectively graded by some asshole. And here I am. I did eventually make my way into nursing, and nursing has several right answers, but one answer is always the most right. And that's the correct answer. And the instructor cannot come in and subjectively grade you down. So that's my whole rant on that shitty class, this awful book, and why I'm no longer an English major.
Yeah, so I wanted to get this out there. On Goodreads, you described this as a book so bad it changed the course of your life. And that's a line that needs to be in the podcast.
Yeah. I almost want to give it 5 stars for saving me from...
For saving you. I won't say that. I mean, obviously we know some English majors who are not terrible, but...
Who?
English is one of those... I know English majors that aren't terrible. English is one of those majors where it's kind of like, you have to have a plan. You're not just going to get out of the school with your degree and be like, job, please. Whereas like computer science, I had a job months before I graduated. I had internships the whole way.
Tons of interviews for jobs as soon as I got out with my nursing degree.
So yeah, it is, you know, it's not that you shouldn't go into English, but if you go into English, you're going to have to do a little more heavy lifting than if you went into some other majors. So I'll temper what you're saying. I know you're very emotional right now at having to relive this traumatizing experience.
The post-traumatic stress disorder is something I didn't learn in my English undergrad.
Well, you didn't make it to the class where they learned psychology through literature, but we'll get to that.
Psychology through literature. Well, you know, I wouldn't know. I would just have to pick a class at random, and it depends on who the teacher is to determine what the subject matter is going to be about. Like colonialism, Ben. So let's get into the book.
Let's get into the book. Yeah. So the book is Memories of My Melancholy Horrors, as we said, by Gabriel García Márquez. And with a name like that, you just know it's going to be subtle.
Yeah. Subtly awful. I'm kidding. It's overtly awful.
Go ahead and give the summary. I'll interject if I feel like you're being unfair.
All right. So the book is written from the perspective of a guy who just turned 90 with a butthole that's on fire. And he's like, I'm 90 years old. I'm at the end of my life.
Treat yourself.
Yeah. You know it'd be really nice? A virgin. But not just any virgin.
Whoa, not what I meant.
Not just any virgin, Ben. I need an underage virgin.
I was thinking like maybe fine leather goods, jewelry.
Yeah,
nice
she
dinner.
could wear that. She could wear fine leather goods and some jewelry, you know what I'm saying? Just as long as she's horribly underage, even if I weren't 90 years old. I'm just saying I'm gonna dislocate a hip tonight. You know what I'm saying, dog?
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of question as to whether or not he can perform throughout the book.
hey,
I like to imagine there's an English major out there who is unfortunately having to analyze whether or not this old man was indeed ever able to get it up. But this is going to be an explicit episode, by the way. If the title did not give that away, I'm going to be checking that box when this one gets uploaded.
so he calls his good friend Kabarakis? Is that her name?
Not even close.
I can't remember. I didn't write it down. So Kabarkis?
Kabarkis.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm white. I'm horribly white. So I don't want. I think it'll be more insulting if I try. So I'm gonna say it as I see it.
I think the American accent would be Kabarkis.
Kabarkis. All right. So she is the madame at a whore house, a lady of the night factory.
Okay. I mean, they don't make them.
So she hooks him up with the finest of 14-year-old sex worker who during the day I'm glad they gave a backstory so I can feel properly awful about having to read this, right? During the day she puts buttons on things for like no money at all to support all of her family, who it sounds like is exclusively younger siblings. And during the night, she's being sexually exploited so that she can make ends meet. Awesome. I love this so much already.
Sadly, I would imagine there are parents in the picture because somebody put her up to this.
Yeah.
So that's not
right.
better.
It's actually worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one point, they do mention there's another girl whose father was looking to sell her virginity to pay off some sort of gambling debt. So that's fun too.
Great. I love this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Book.
Thank you for making me read it.
Yeah. You're welcome. I'm going to turn this
Thanks,
fan
patrons.
back on. Yeah.
You did this.
So, let's talk about how this all goes down. He gets himself all dolled up for a night on the town. 90 years old. Big Chad. He goes into the room and she is out like a light. Because you see, as a virgin, and also, I cannot stress this enough, a 14-year-old, this is her first time, and she's not into it, so they had to drug her.
It was an herbal remedy. Unreliable madam tells us.
The unreliable madam. I thought it was benzos. I thought it was a little bit of the old Xanax.
She says it's valerian. But I agree. Well, I also don't think the girl is actually that unconscious.
No, I think she also pretends. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you blame her? I can't.
It's a strategy that works. Kind of. We'll see.
Yeah, so then he's like, well, she's asleep. She won't wake up. I'm just going to try and do this anyway. Hooray. But his old man arms cannot pry her legs apart, which I'm okay with? Oh, God.
It's a disturbing scene.
And then after that, he's like, well, guess I'll just take a nap. And so he sleeps next to her. And then she wakes up in the middle of the night, and then he goes home, and is this when he falls in love with her? I think that comes later.
I think at first he swears never to do it again.
Yeah,
he
he's
thinks,
like, I'm done with this. I don't need. I'm good. I'm gonna go retire
he thinks
from.
Just as well. I didn't do anything. So
that makes it A-okay. We're just gonna move on. Nothing happened. We definitely didn't try to force ourselves on a 14-year-old girl.
Well, I would point out, so the narrator
has a burning butthole, and he has logged at least 500 conquests with women, one of which was his housekeeper, who he talks about plowing in the butt when she bends over to do laundry. And he always says he makes a point of paying them money, even if they're not sex workers, which is really weird, right? I don't think that my wife would be happy if I handed her 100 after we had sex. I think that would be a little weird and demeaning.
I was just going to point out that at this point, because I don't know how deep into it you're going to get in your summary, but everyone is totally non-judgmental about the girl's age.
Yeah. Everyone is like totally cool with it and encourages him to wake her up to have sex with her.
At no point
I felt like I was on crazy pills, Ben.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
At no point does anybody say that this is inappropriate. No character ever expresses. The old man seems to understand that what he's doing is wrong, which is not better. And he doesn't care. He's able to forget that very easily. And at one point when Rosa Cabarcas calls him and tells him she found him a girl that meets his requirements, the only problem is she's 14, he says, I don't mind changing diapers. That's the exact line.
Ah, you're right.
And so it's not, I point that out because I have seen in positive reviews of this book, obviously Words About Books, where I guess unsophisticated people, we look at the literal interpretation.
we take things at face value.
Yeah. So all the positive reviews of this book make a point of mentioning that, like, no, this isn't about glorifying pedophilia or sex trafficking or exploitation of girls in impoverished countries. This is about the joie de vivre, the joy of life, the discovery of an old man finding love in his final years, and it's so beautiful and such a human story, and it's not, though. It is very much about those things, and
right.
It doesn't. The fact that it never reckons with this, because that's going to be an ongoing theme, is that this is a problem that is, not a problem for anyone in the book. The book never is at any point critical of it. The book never paints any of the people involved in the trafficking as anything other than lovable, witty, charming. Like, Rosa Cabarcas is always talking to him, like razzing him, slinging one-liners. She's funny. She's portrayed as a very likable character. The narrator is portrayed as a very witty, well-spoken, likable character. And I will make this case further as we go along, but I guess keep in mind that as we go, I'm taking the notion that it kind of does glorify these things. I'm sorry. Like, he is a good writer, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the only, I wouldn't call it a saving grace because it doesn't make it better. The writer is very good at what he does. It's just a shame he decided to write about like this instead of literally anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, all right, I'm done. I had my fun. I didn't do anything. I'm okay. Jesus will forgive me. He doesn't say that, but okay. So he's like, he writes a column in the newspaper which has its own special censor. Ooh, pick up on that one, Ben. We'll talk about that at the end. He decides to turn in his resignation, and then
he wants to turn in his final column is going to be his resignation. So he writes in the final column that he is leaving, and he shows up to drop it off as he usually does.
He gets a party for its 90th
there's a surprise birthday.
Secretaries at his job talk about wanting to bang him. It's really weird. Like, okay.
They're not seriously talking about trying to bang him.
They're still explicit enough that it's weird. I know they're not serious. I know they're being playful and joking.
Yeah.
But it's pretty explicit. Maybe that's a cultural thing? I don't know.
Maybe that's a
think if someone said that to me, or if I said that to someone else, I'd be meeting with HR pretty quickly.
Well, there is probably no HR at this place, and
it's the government. The government is HR.
There's an element of culture. I don't think they're being quite as explicit. I think they're just insinuating that, like, oh, they'd hook up with him, blah blah blah. Like, oh, you're such a cutie, blah 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 blah. I don't think it's that out of the realm, because he comments on how that is a thing. When you get to a certain age, women feel comfortable doing that with you because they know you're too old. And I have seen that. I haven't seen it quite that explicit, but I have seen, like, the playful, not flirting of, like, a diner waitress with her old man regular saying, like, oh, you're such a sweetie if I were, 20 years younger. But yeah, it is what it is. So they all flirt with him. But he's very charming.
Oh, senor, she said with a mournful lament. That wasn't made for coming in, but for going out.
That is not at the surprise party.
Oh, I know. But it is it is a quote that I had. Jeez. So
that is Damiana.
That night, I discovered the improbable pleasure of contemplating the body of a sleeping woman without the urgencies of desire or the obstacles of modesty. My note just says, bullshit.
Woman is a strong word in that sentence.
And also, you tried to bang her while she slept.
Yeah.
He also talks about a woman who he left at the altar.
Ah, yes, Jimena Ortiz.
Is that how you say that name?
Yes. How would you say it?
I'm not going to say it now. I would say it exactly like that, Ben.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you said I was going to have to pronounce the names. You forgot.
How would you have said it? Like Zima?
Probably the first way, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so he had a fiance once upon a time, and he describes it as them having this, like, whirlwind romance. They were very in love, and then all of the sudden it gets all the way to they're going to have a wedding, and he just doesn't show up.
Yep.
He just decides not to show up at the wedding, and obviously she leaves him, and they never look back. And ever since then, it's been nothing but non-attachment, no love. There is no love in his life.
The adolescents of my generation, greedy for life, forgotten body and soul about their hopes for the future until reality taught them that tomorrow was not what they had dreamed, and they discovered nostalgia. I thought that was a pretty good quote. It's a shame that it's wrapped in a novel about a 90-year-old man trying to bone a 14-year-old. Let's move on. He turned in his resignation, then he went back on it. He decided he wanted to keep doing the column, and that's when he relapses into pedophilia. Is that a thing you fall off the wagon for? Because he did that.
I think he was ready. This is what I think the story's trying to do. He was ready to slowly give in to the old age. He was ready to wind down and basically just kind of wait for death. He's running out of money. He's sold off most of his family's fortune. He has no heir. He has no child. He has no family whatsoever.
Okay, the secretaries presented me with 3 pairs of silk undershorts printed with kisses and a card in which they offered to remove them for me. That's pretty explicit, Ben.
Okay, I'll give you
I
that
get
one.
what you're saying, but that's still pretty explicit.
I'll give you that one. He's a dirty old man.
Yes.
And everybody knows it.
And he's ugly. He makes a point of saying that.
He makes a point of saying he's very ugly.
Horrifically hideous.
What's wrong with your
But
face?
after he decides to continue writing the column, that's symbolic of him rejecting that complacency. He's not just going to wait for death. He's going to live his life to the fullest. And for him,
instead of like taking up a
unfortunately,
new hobby or
traveling or
yeah, his way of seizing the day, carpe diem or whatever, Ben, is
go on. No, I was going to wait. Are you going to carpe these nuts?
like oh, there's also a note in here. This guy served a 20-year sentence for multiple homicide, and my note says that seems like a pretty light sentence. But okay, so yeah, he's gonna carpe these nuts, Ben.
There you go.
Huh.
And the only way to do that for him is to go back to the source of what made him feel this new life. And that is the young girl.
And so he's like, bring me a young girl.
Well, no, he's like, bring me that girl.
Yes,
that
it has to be
specific girl.
that one.
Yeah, has to be her. I want to point out, I think they're trying to
You
do
know how
something
like
here.
the Baron Harkonnen had a thing
Oh,
for
God.
really young boys, but like he was also the villain. Like we weren't supposed to be rooting for the really hideous guy who had sex with underage people. That was the bad guy.
Unfortunately, I think the theme of this book, if we're going to indulge in a little, what does this represent? I think he, obviously being 90 years old, very near death, very near the expenditure of not just his life, but all of his family's resources. Like he is the end of a line. He is an ending. And she is a beginning. She is young. She is at the beginning of her life, and she is nothing but potential. And it is not unlike the Dracula of books past. It is her life that he needs to feed on.
She's got nothing but potential, so it's really a shame that she was forced into sex trafficking.
Now we should mention, at no point in this book does he have sex with her.
Yeah, that doesn't make it necessarily better.
No,
It
it's
only
not better. I mean,
Yeah.
she's still quite nude and vividly described.
Yes,
But
and he kisses her all over her body.
yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad. I'm not saying it's not bad. But I think that's the theme they're trying to go for, is that she is young, he is old. She is life, he is death. He is finding in her the joy and the love that he had never had. And I think we're supposed to find it beautiful that love never dies.
I don't
I think
find it
that's-
beautiful, though.
I'm going to get to why that doesn't work after we finish the summary.
After we get to this next part of the summary, where
Yeah, please go
once
on.
again she's asleep. Once again, he just kind of hangs out with her, sleeps next to her, and also nude. And how much more you want me to go in depth? Because he does this a lot, and like he goes home and he starts
So,
feeling
night
her
after night-
presence. He starts feeling her presence, Ben, and then he
Okay.
gives her a name, Delgadina, right?
Delgadita.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So he calls her this name, and the madame is like, "Oh no, that's not her name. Her name is." He's like, "No,
Silence.
do not tell me her actual name, because that will dispel the image of her that he's created in his head." And
Yes. So let me say a few things that you're skipping over a little too much. he starts
God forbid.
as part of his imaginings of this life with her. He starts writing about love in his column. And his column becomes a national sensation. They start reading it on radio broadcasts. The paper starts syndicating it. It is a whole new renaissance for his career. He's never had much of a career. He's been painfully average in everything he has ever done. But now, because of Delgadita, he is rejuvenated. He's finding everything he ever wanted. He can write about this love. And the love is entirely in his head. She will not speak one word in this entire story. He never has a single conversation with her. He's never intimate with her. He just stares at her nude form and projects a girl he imagines onto her.
She does leave him a card calling him the old ugly man or something like that. That's all we get from her.
Exchange Christmas cards, yeah.
Yeah. Because, that's who I would want to exchange Christmas cards with. The old man who's trying to fuck me.
Hey, he does buy her a bike. Then she gets sick and he can't see her for a bit, and that causes him to spiral. And the other thing you need to know...
And he goes looking for her at one point, but he doesn't know her name because,
Well, I want to talk more in detail about that part of the book. But he is spending his entire life savings. He's selling the remainder of his possession. This is not cheap. Every night he's with her costs money.
Yeah, he starts bringing like a fan and some paintings.
Yeah, he basically starts setting up the brothel room as like a little apartment that he pretends that they share together.
Yeah.
Then,
but at no point are we supposed to believe he's losing his mind to dementia.
I kind of want to get into that more. So eventually there will come a day when a client, a separate client of the brothel, is murdered by one of the prostitutes. And it's hinted that it might have even been... Well, it is definitely a government official, but it's also might have been like a gay affair. And so it's doubly scandalous. There's all this intrigue around it. And we did not mention, I think, that this is in Colombia. This is where your colonialism comes in.
Yeah, it's in Colombia, which is never mentioned directly. You have to look at the river or something. That's how I figured it out.
Yeah, so this is in Colombia. The government is very corrupt. They sweep a lot of things under the rug, but they also
there's also police checkpoints in this. You're supposed to make that a key point if you're in my English class, Ben. That's important. There are police checking your identification in the park, Ben.
I'm going to talk about that.
That's very important to this novel about a 90-year-old man and his 14-year-old prostitute that he projects a persona onto and pretends like they have a relationship together.
So the madam comes to this guy to help dress this murder victim and basically get him into a position where they can make it look like plausibly something else. She has been operating this brothel, which is illegal, in plain sight. Everybody knows about it. It is frequented by many government officials, but this is a scandal that this might be a little too much heat. We'll see. So the old man wants her to make sure that Delgadita gets out of there okay. But he's got to go. She's got to go. And they both take off. No one, the madam even says, why don't you take Delgadita with you and she'll be safe at your place? And he's like, no, absolutely not. Because... then I will have to speak to her and it would burst my bubble. So no, I'm not going to take her. You make sure she's safe though. You trustworthy Rosa Cabarcas who traffics 14-year-old girls. You make sure she's okay. You risk your own skin to make sure that she gets out of here okay. Needless to say, that doesn't happen. So both of them bail and then the place gets raided and it vanishes, basically. It's shut down. The building is locked. There are shady government people, secret police types who are turning away all visitors. And he can't find Delgadita. Rosa Cabarcus does not answer any phone calls. He can't find her either. He doesn't even know where to begin looking for Delgadita because he doesn't know her name.
Yeah.
He also
goes to a button factory at one point, is like, let me look at your girls. Oh, yep, she's not.
Yeah,
there.
and there's like 14-year-old girls getting hit by cars right and left at one point for some reason. He goes to the hospital and he can't identify any of them. And it occurs to him that he's never actually, not only does he not know her name, he's never actually seen her in bright light. And he's never seen her wearing clothes. He has no idea how she does her hair. He doesn't know what she looks like. He doesn't know what color her eyes are because they're never open.
Just pick one, you fucking weirdo.
So he just keeps looking for her and he can't find her. And his column becomes forlorn. So forlorn that people are writing in and saying, oh, we need to solve this heartbreak. We need to find him his lost love. I assume most of the readership doesn't know it's a 14-year-old prostitute.
Yes.
But
Jesus.
Yeah, this old man who found... So all these people reading the column think this is this beautiful love story of this 90-year-old man who found love late in life. And I'm sure that is a very beautiful story, except it's got this weird darkness to it. And yeah, eventually he does get back in touch with Rosa Cabarcus. She comes back after a month. She basically fled the city. She doesn't know where Delgadita is. Like, obviously, Delgadita's doing something else with her life. It's been nearly a year. And so, yeah, she doesn't know where she is, but she'll try to find her for him, I guess. And when they arrange for him to finally meet back up with Delgadita,
Delgadina,
goes,
Ben. It's not
it's
Dita.
Dita.
No, it's
It
not.
is.
Delgadina.
Okay.
I'm looking
The thing
right
I'm
at it
looking at-
right now.
I'm looking at a thing that says Delgadita.
Well, where is that so I can say how wrong it is? I'm looking at the actual book. That's right, I got the book up, Ben. Hey, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut here. We had a conversation about this, but I believe Ben is correct in that her name is supposed to be Delgadita, but I didn't know that because the translation I have has her as Delgadina. And the only reason Ben knows differently is because he confided in me that he listened to this on audiobook like a dirty little cheater. So, that's why he knows how to pronounce all the names, and I don't. That's the only reason. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm an uncultured swine. So it's all Ben cheating. Let's get back into it.
All right. Point is, goes back up. She's there, but she's changed. She no longer looks like a tiny girl. She's gone from 14 to 16. She has begun to develop in womanly ways, and somebody painted her face with makeup, too much makeup. She looks like a yeah, and she looks like another word that sounds like that.
Yes, and he says that loudly, and I put in my paper. What an astute observation.
Yes, so he sees that she no longer looks like his precious little doll. She looks like a whore. And he has the greatest room-destroying scene since Citizen Kane.
I was going to say since Tommy Wiseau.
Since what?
Tommy Wiseau.
Since Tommy Wiseau, yes.
You are tearing me apart!
Oh, God damn. Yeah, he absolutely destroys this room, causes tons of damage, like lots of monetary damage to this room, freaks the girl out. She's pretty terrified.
Yeah.
Rosa Cabarcus comes up and is like, "You done now?" And he's like, "Yes."
You sold her to get out of that political thing, you
Yes.
dick.
Yeah, he makes up this story in his head that, well, like, she didn't make it out in time and she was given to the soldiers in exchange for Rosa Kabarkas's freedom. And even as he was saying that, like, I couldn't tell if the book was saying that that was what happened or just that's what he thought would happen. Rosa Kabarkas says that that's not what happened. I think it's ludicrous to assume that this girl has not been with anybody else.
Duh.
In all this time in a brothel. But you do you, old man. I don't know. So she's ruined for him. But eventually they're able to convince him that this
object in his mind is in fact not ruined, and thus you can go spend time with this object.
Yes.
And write in your will that when you die, she'll inherit your fortune. You fucking idiot.
Yeah, basically, Rosa Kabarkas
speed the process up a little bit, by the way?
Rosa Kabarkas makes him sign over everything, not to the girl, by the way, but to her.
Ah, yes.
And she promises that she will sign it all over to the girl.
A trustworthy person who, by the way, says that one is madly in love with you. It's like,
yes.
No.
Yes, Rosa
no, she's not.
Assures him that, yeah, she loves you, and
she talks about you all the time when she's not pretending to be asleep.
I mean, she's probably like, look, she decided she was going to sell her body to help her family, and
I don't know,
now,
she decided that, but yeah.
Can a 14-year-old decide that? But anyway, it's something like that's what they're doing here. So better deal for her than she probably expected. She doesn't have to have sex with him, so that's probably a big bonus of this relationship for her. And she still gets paid the full amount and more. So neat. That's great. That's kind of the end of the book, by the way. It's implied that, he's just going to live happily in that delusion for the rest of his life and then die. Okay.
Yeah, here's one more quote for you. The breezes, however, also brought me the bad news that Delgadina could not spend the Christmas holidays with me, but would be with her family. If I detest anything in this world, it is the obligatory celebrations with people crying because they're happy, artificial fires, inane carols, crepe paper wreaths that have nothing to do with the child born 2,000 years ago in a poor stable. And my note there says, yeah, she should be spending time with her pedophile great-grandfather.
Yeah, that's what Jesus would have wanted.
Yeah. All right, Ben. Let's talk about colonialism, which is what this book is really about, right?
I want to do real quick
before. Else? Okay.
I do have something else. Let's do a little proper literary analysis of this book's meaning.
Okay.
And let's keep it within the context of the book itself.
Okay.
I think there is a possible intended interpretation of this book where it is not beautiful. It is, maybe the author intends it with all the complexity and problem it has. And that could be to say that he does not, he does understand that the old man is not falling in love. He is falling in some kind of weird desire loop where he imagines the perfect woman and falls in love with the delusion of that and is consumed by that and has to give away all his possessions to maintain it, and that he is in fact a debauched, destructive, self-destructive individual who is basically completely insane, and maybe it's actually not a beautiful story but a tragedy. That's my interpretation of the book, actually, is that this is all horrible. And I think there's some weird choices that the author makes that support that, namely the signing over of everything to Rosa Kabarkas. I think she is not intended to be a good person, and you're supposed to kind of question her motives at all times. So I do think reading between the lines, this is maybe not beautiful, and maybe it's the kind of beauty of insanity almost, is if it's comforting to him, does it matter that he is exploiting people and then being exploited himself? Does it, like, Is it the weird cycle of like something beautiful coming out of all these horrible wrongs? I don't know. I kind of wonder if that's the intended interpretation, if the author has an intended interpretation. Most people I have seen give this positive reviews seem to think that this is a beautiful love story. That I cannot get behind.
Yeah, that is false. So many levels. The underage level, the age difference level, the exploitation level, the fact that he's never even talked to her. She is an object he has imagined. He is projecting an ideal woman onto her.
The most interesting thing about the text is the fact that he never talks to her. Because there's another way to write this book where he simply is a 90-year-old man who falls in love with a prostitute. And you could make the prostitute a character. She could talk to him. She could be she could be of age. And she could maybe not even like him, but tolerate him. And that's enough for him. And there's beauty in that. I don't know. The choice to make Delgadina a non-character, a tabula rasa that he can project whatever he wants onto, is an interesting one. And that, to me, introduces all these possible interpretations of the book that I haven't seen a lot of reviewers tackle. I think if, though, the intention is to introduce complexity and to introduce a darkness to the underlying beauty, that they kind of fail in that as well, because the dialogue is too witty. The narrator and Rosa Kabarkis are too likable. Like, they're too good on screen together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're too buddy-buddy. They're too funny. They're too...
Yeah, the dislike comes from the reader, not from the text.
Yeah. So I don't know, honestly, what he was trying to do. I can see an interpretation of this book where it's not horrible. I think saying that it endorses like sex trafficking or pedophilia, I think that might be a little strong, but it introduces those things as themes and then refuses to explore them in any kind of critical way whatsoever. And then also paints the people who engage in those crimes as charming, witty, funny, lovable characters. And that is a problem for me. I don't want books to necessarily spoon feed me the meaning. I don't mind that it makes me think. And like I said, I'm reading a translation. I don't speak Spanish. But I can tell, I think, even through the translation, that Marquez deserves his Nobel Prize. He is a very talented writer.
We'll take a quarter away.
These characters are very interesting, and there's a lot to think about. But yeah, it's just, if it's supposed to be beautiful, decidedly a swing and a miss there. It is not beautiful. If it's supposed to be complicated, I need more. I need more nuance. I need more of a reality check on the narrator.
You need at least one character to say, dude, you're doing what now?
Yeah. Or I need some indication that the narrator is unreliable.
Or some indication that the people around him don't just
Well, I get the indication that Rosa Kabarkis is a liar.
Praise. Oh, yeah.
But I don't get the indication that the narrator is a liar.
Yeah.
I don't get the indication that the narrator doesn't know how people perceive him. He seems to get a pretty accurate read on everybody around him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah.
I don't have any indication that, like, this is bad from the text itself.
Yeah. I think
from
I need
us as readers who go,
Yeah. I feel like I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting to make a thing that is not okay. And when I find myself in that position, like, I know this guy is big brain, smart guy writer. Better than me, better than most people. Good for him. Genuinely good for him. At the end of the day, this is a problematic story. a real problematic story.
Yeah.
And I think all the people who hand wave that away saying, oh, this isn't a dirty old man book. Oh, this isn't a book that endorses pedophilia. Kind of does. I mean, I'm sorry, but it kind of does. If it's satire, it's too subtle. Like, if it's satire, it's so subtle that it becomes the thing it's satirizing.
And usually with satire, you don't have a bunch of people say, no, it's actually not this thing. It's
I don't
not
think
about
this dude
an
has
old
any...
man.
I don't think this dude is as bothered as I am by the idea of a 14-year-old prostitute.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So
yeah,
take
that's
that for what you will.
pretty on the ball right there. Yeesh. So, all right, Ben. Now,
problem.
as your English professor or teacher or whatever, gonna have to give you. You made a lot of good points, but also I don't like you. So here's a B minus for you. Gabriel.
Did she give you a B minus on that paper?
I think she gave me a C plus, which is what I'm gonna give Gabriel. Sorry, so that's what I'm gonna have to give you. You had a lot of great prose, but didn't like it. C plus. Next time, write according to my guidelines, which I don't have and won't share with you even if I did. All right.
I'm turning this over to the FBI and their Colombian equivalent. So,
yeah,
now
let's
we can
talk about colonialism, Ben.
Colonialism.
So why are we talking about colonialism?
Why are we talking about colonialism?
Yeah.
What did she think she was doing with this class?
So
I'm curious.
So this was an intro to fiction class, right?
There is a statue of Christopher Columbus at one point, so colonialism.
Yeah, and there are police in the park. That was an important thing. I hope you remembered that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here is the class description. This is not the same one I took. Obviously, things have been edited over the years. In-depth reading of and writing about prose fiction with emphasis on critical analysis of a variety of narrative types from different historical periods, which is very vague and also not sure that's what I got. But thing is, the instructor gets to pick what you read and what you talk about.
You're really, really bothered by that.
I would like to know what I'm getting into.
I think the instructor should get to pick what you read.
I think the instructor should somehow they should be listing out what I should be expecting from the course, Ben. There's a lot of fiction out there. What if it was just nothing but Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Ben? There are multiple of those, I understand.
So is this the same class where you read Haroon and the Sea Stories?
And they're both about colonialism somehow, Ben. And the thought police.
Okay. They both have elements of post-colonial disorder in them. If I were to do some kind of comparative essay on the theme of colonialism in Haroon and the Sea of Stories and Memories of My Melancholy Horrors, that is the common thread, is that both of them are set against a backdrop of corrupt and inadequate governments.
So a backdrop.
Struggling to secure themselves.
Isn't there a joke in, I'm going to say, a Naked Gun movie with the Oscars where it's like, it's this romantic love story or whatever, set against the backdrop of the Hindenburg.
Mary Lou Retton, Fatal Affair. One woman's ordeal to overcome the death of her cat, set against the background of the Hindenburg disaster.
It's like a bunch of like historical tragedies in the background with a story that has nothing to do with it for Oscar bait.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of where I was going to go with this. Okay. So we're not reviewing the book anymore. We're reviewing your English class, which I wasn't a part of. So it's tough for me. But I would say if you're trying to get any kind of like feel for the impact of colonialism in Colombia in the 20th century, this is not the book.
What? You don't think that this weird book about... Yeah, no, I'm not even going to pretend. No,
I didn't even know it was in Colombia till I looked it up.
Yes,
I thought it was in Spain.
I knew it was somewhere in South or Central America. but I wasn't sure, and I had to look up the name of the river in order to find the country that the river is in.
Yeah, so what I knew was that they were dealing with, I mean, obviously everybody speaks Spanish, and I don't know.
My translation,
Spanish.
They all spoke English.
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about Spanish enough to know that it's South American Spanish rather than European Spanish.
Or Portuguese, Ben.
I would know it's not Portuguese. I'm not that dumb. But I don't know. Colonialism has different effects all over the world. Like with Haroon and the Sea of Stories, Pakistan and India being cut from each other along religious lines after
Bangladesh after the British leave. I call it Bangladesh because that's what
is
my friend called it. He was from there.
Bangladesh is probably closer to the pronunciation.
That's right.
Okay, but
That's
I'm
right.
American.
Anyway, go on.
So that's a very different kind of separation than what happened in Colombia, which is different than what happened, in Venezuela, which is different than what happened in Africa. Colonialism is complicated. Not to state the obvious here, but if you try to start unraveling why the world is the way it is, you're going to be unraveling for quite a long time.
It was all Rome's fault, okay? If Julius Caesar hadn't been assassinated, never would have been colonialism or World War II. Checkmate.
If Julius Caesar hadn't crossed the Rubicon, maybe none of this would have happened.
Ooh. Hoo-hoo.
Yeah, maybe he should have surrendered his post. Maybe he shouldn't have broken the law, Nate.
Ooh. Big facts.
Oh, Lord. Okay. So, yeah, I don't... The role colonialism plays in this book, I don't get it. And I could tell you I know very, very little about South American history except where it intersects with U.S. history, which is usually us doing the colonialism. So,
yep, that is. We did do that a lot.
Yeah. So I don't really know how I could write without going back and reading tons of background on Colombian history. I don't know how I could meaningfully talk about colonialism in this novel.
All right, I'm also going to throw this out there. James, friend of the podcast, if you're listening, I know you watched the movie Cosmopolis. I hope you read the book because that was also in this class. So
there's
you
also
get brownie
a movie
points
of
if you can tell me what Cosmopolis has to do with colonialism. All right.
Yeah, there's also a movie of this, James. So,
ew, no thanks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you could have gotten out of that. I think classes like that in general are kind of bad. I think colonial fiction requires a lot of background to have any kind of
You don't think
discussion.
Some random introduction to fiction course is the best way to get me invested into learning about post-colonialism?
I think it's worth noting, especially if your professor knows a lot about it, if they have, your teacher.
Yes.
If they have some
junior teacher
special background on this, then
I don't think they do.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe. So I
don't know if I'll be asked. No, she's not from South America, or wasn't even from a country that was colonized, or did colonizing.
If we go back far enough, everything was a colony of something.
Yeah, fucking Sumerians, dicks. God, am I right?
Yeah, they're to blame for most of this. I do think it is valuable to seek out and read literature and fiction from countries you're not super familiar with, who have different backgrounds, different problems, different economics. But this colonialism is not a strong theme in this book. if it is a theme, then I do not know enough about Colombia to have even picked up on it.
Did you not see the people in the park, Ben? That was a big important thing in our discussion. There were police officers in the park, Ben. They were checking papers, Ben. Do you not remember that? That was important. That was a part of a chapter in there between the time that he goes back for the underage prostitute and he resumes his job at the papers. Did you see those guys in the park? They were checking papers, Ben.
Yeah, okay. What does that have to do with colonialism?
Because they were part of a corrupt regime, Ben.
And corrupt regimes only exist in formerly colonized places?
Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank Christ. I guess Donald Trump is okay then.
No, we were a former colony, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we kind of, unfortunate.
I do see the presence of authoritarianism in this novel.
And
I told you, I thought they were in Spain
either. Yeah.
I thought they were in Spain because
you thought this was a fascist regime.
Yeah, Spain was fascist for a lot of the 20th century, and it would fit there too. There's a lot of places that have bad governments. That doesn't necessarily
and they all have one theme in common: colonialism.
Yeah, I mean we're debunking. We're going over your decades at this point old grudge.
Yeah, because I have a podcast and she doesn't. Also, she made a joke in class that was like, "I'm Romanian. Don't worry, I won't make you guys read Dracula." And I was like, "Oh, please make us read Dracula." And after having read Dracula,
you still didn't think Dracula was from Romania.
Well, yeah, it could have been from, the Ottoman Empire. Hey, they got their freedom. It just took them a while. They got it. I mean, they didn't do what America did, and throw off those shackles. But, they got there eventually. With the help from a bunch of other companies, unlike America, who single-handedly won the Revolutionary War. Don't listen to anyone. That is 100% true. Don't say anything, Ben. We're moving on.
No, I want you to go back and listen to this and note how you Freudian slipped the word companies instead of countries.
I mean, is there going to be a difference at some point?
No, not at all. That's all I really have to say about this. I think for me this is a fairly unsuccessful story.
Yep, C+. Try harder, idiot. Also, if you were gonna have people read from this author, you don't think you would pick the one he won the
Nobel Prize for? Yeah.
Wouldn't pick a different book, maybe?
Yeah.
It's like once we make it big, you know how it is. Once we become huge authors, it'd be like making someone read Edenverse. You get it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say this one is a miss for me. I think you did write a very antagonistic paper. I think I did read it.
Yeah.
Because I remember telling you, obviously she was going to grade this poorly.
Hey.
And I remember you telling me that she didn't have a rubric, so she has no ground.
Yeah.
And you're trying to rules lawyer your way out of your C.
Yeah. Suck my dick.
There was a way to say you didn't like it for these reasons that wouldn't have gotten you a C.
Yeah, there was a way. But there's also a way to write this novella without having a 90-year-old man try to fuck a 14-year-old prostitute for everyone around him to be absolutely A-okay about it. But they didn't do that either, so,
touche. I really don't have a defense for that one. This has been Words About Books. If you would like to reach out to us and tell us what Philistines we are for not appreciating fine literature, then you could do that on Elon Musk's Twitter at WABpod. Do it on Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg's Instagram at Words About Books Podcast. There is a blog.wordsaboutbooks.ninja, where I have been dropping articles sporadically. I think you should read them. If you would like to go the extra mile, if you would like to become part of the elite who vote on these sorts of books, then you could join our Patreon at patreon.com/WABpod.
Oh my god.
There's also a Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/WABpod if you just want to leave a tip.
We also owe a shout out.
We owe a shout out
to
our single.
shout-outs.
No,
Yes.
to our single. No.
Incorrect. I'm looking at it right now. Once again, I've got it right in front of me.
Did they change back?
And you don't. It's James, our friend, who is a $10 yacht plan supporter as of a few days ago.
Okay.
You were trying to overlook him.
The $10 changed. Okay, you're right. Sorry, you're right. I hadn't been up on the latest. Okay, here are the shout-outs. And you know what? I'm going to include shout-outs to their projects. You got to check out Jamie of If You Want the Gravy fame. Google it. You'll find his blog. It's an awesome movie blog. Check out Brad at Isekai Sensei Sama on Twitter. He has a podcast that has a guy on it that sounds very familiar to me. At the time I got reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcaster. A book so bad it changed the course of your life.